way to make it work is to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade.
Instead, he's making things more attractive to them as Labour push for a change in the Tories' Illegal Migration Act, which will mean migrant adults can say that they are children, and most children migrants end up being allowed to stay. Why on earth would Sir Keir Starmer be doing this when he previously had this to say?
The previous government were running an open borders experiment.
So what is this? Surely, Prime Minister, you are now trying to run your own. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? You can also cast your vote on our GBNews poll. Go to gbnews.com. And in our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK join the EU Customs Union? The Prime Minister is being urged by Arch Remainer Sir Ed Davey to do just that. European leaders tomorrow, he's meeting them, but wouldn't this just be the first stage of dragging us back into the EU? And why on earth would you do that at this time when Donald Trump is about to set tariffs on them? So the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK join an EU customs union? Well, before we get started, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. Our headlines. Sir Keir Starmer has rejected suggestions the UK will rejoin the EU, saying the decision is settled as he faces calls to broker a customs union with the bloc. Speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to Chequers, the Prime Minister said, "I do want a reset of the relationship that does not involve a return to the EU." Now, the two leaders met at the Prime Minister's country residence ahead of Sir Keir's visit to Belgium for a summit of European leaders. The Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, has urged the Prime Minister to start talks on a new union with the EU, claiming it would boost the UK economy and strengthen trade against the US. The UK is set to become the first country in the world to criminalise owning AI tools that create images of child sexual abuse. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says offenders could face up to 5 years in prison under the new crackdown. Owning AI paedophile manuals could carry a 3-year sentence. Meanwhile, ministers are warning that AI-generated images are being used to blackmail children and push them into live streaming abuse. New laws to target smuggling gangs have been introduced in an effort to stop small boat crossings and migrant deaths in the English Channel. The Home Office hopes these new counter-terror style powers will enable authorities to go further in dismantling the gangs and their ability to operate. The government has also announced millions of pounds worth of funding to tackle the root causes of illegal migration. Canada and Mexico have announced retaliatory tariffs after the United States imposed import taxes on the two countries and China. Now, Donald Trump ordered 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on goods from China. He says it's to hold his largest trading partners accountable for failing to halt drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Well, China's indicated it will challenge those tariffs through the World Trade Organization, but the Mexican President, Claudia Sheinbaum, and the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, have responded immediately with countermeasures.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the US trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Well, Trump has defended the move on social media, saying the decades-long rip-off of America in regard to trade, crime and poisonous drugs is over. And he suggested similar sanctions may be imposed on the EU.
The European Union charges us 20% plus a VAT tax, called a VAT tax, very similar. And it costs us an absolute fortune. We are treated so badly, and we have a tremendous deficit with the European Union, so we'll be doing something very substantial.
Barclays says the technical problems that left some customers unable to access their accounts for several days have now been resolved. The glitch, which began on Payday Friday, left some people unable to make transactions, access their account, or even, in some cases, pay their tax bills. Barclays has apologised. It says delayed payments have now been processed and it will ensure no impacted customers are left out of pocket. HMRC has extended the deadline for payments until the 1st of March. A woman has died in Australia and thousands have been forced to evacuate their homes after severe flooding in northern Queensland. Authorities say It could be the worst flooding to hit the region for more than 60 years, with water reaching the second storey of some houses. Almost 40 inches of torrential rain has fallen since Friday, leading to thousands of people in Townsville leaving their homes for higher ground. The woman died when the dinghy rescuing her hit a tree and capsized. And to Pennsylvania in the US and the annual Groundhog Day ceremony, where thousands of revellers have been gathering at Gobbler's Knob in the town of Punxsutawney to get weather predictions from a small furry rodent. The tradition, which goes back to 1886, was made famous through the 1993 Bill Murray film. So what was Punxsutawney's Phil's prediction for the end of winter this year?
It's Punxsutawney Phil! I miss my coop, so I'm headed back down. There's a shadow up here. Get ready for 6 more weeks of winter this year. Woo!
Yeah, only in the United States do you get a small scared rodent making weather predictions. Not here in the UK. I'll be back with more news in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It's 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up in this hour, Labour are to repeal laws introduced by the Conservatives that mean that those who arrive here on a small boat could almost never become UK citizens. We'll discuss why on earth they're deciding to take that deterrent away. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants by repealing these laws? Cast your vote in our poll at gbnews.com. And in Worldview, we'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge, and get the latest news from around the world. As it turns out, Donald Trump was deadly serious about those tariffs. All of that coming up. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So the Labour government is watering down border laws which were aimed at blocking illegal migrants from obtaining citizenship and to force them to submit scientific age checks. Now, the Home Office is to repeal rules that were introduced by the Tories that meant that those who arrived here on small boats could almost never become UK citizens. Chris Phelp, the Tories Shadow Home Secretary, has called the news a total capitulation to people who would make the UK a soft touch of Europe. Now, joining me now, the Research Director at the Centre of Migration Control, Robert Bates. Robert, why on earth would the Labour government be targeting that aspect of the illegal migration bill? Surely having these two aspects, first of all, scientifically proven age, and also the fact that if you've come here via a small boat, you can't become a UK citizen, or it will be nigh impossible. Why do you think a Labour government would look to repeal or change that?
Well, they are looking to repeal it because they are putting all their eggs in the smash the gangs basket, and therefore anything that was brought in before they assumed office by the Conservative Party that in any way resembled a deterrent or in any way made life in the UK less than attractive to illegal migrants, they are looking to reverse that. They are so confident in their plan of smashing the gangs that they don't feel they need these additional measures. And let's be perfectly clear, allowing the opportunity for someone that is broken into our country, thrown absolute caution to the wind and really, really played fast and loose with our rules to be given British citizenship is an absolute travesty that really undermines what it actually means to be British. And I think it's incredibly offensive. I think the vast majority of the British public will be scratching their heads at this decision, coupled with the fact that, of course, they're now formally announcing that they are ending the Rwanda scheme as well in the coming week as well. So they have pretty much laid bare, they put all their cards on the table, and they are going full and fast and frankly loose with the Smash the Gangs plan.
But you can go with your idea of smashing the gangs if you think it will work, but part of deterring smugglers from enabling this practice is by ensuring that if those who come here don't have citizenship, then it will deter those crossing as well. Surely that's all part of it. If you take everything away, and everybody knows the first rule in business is never put all your eggs in one basket, or one dinghy in this case. It's absurd.
It's so clear, isn't it? The reason why we have this crisis is because there are so many pull factors at the moment that make life in Britain far too easy for those people that are breaking into their country. British citizenship would ultimately mean that these people are able to claim benefits, that their children are given British citizenship automatically. They're, of course, put up in fancy accommodation, given, lavish meals and bikes and all kinds of goodies like that. The Labour Party don't seem to be wanting to discuss this side of the equation at all. They are, frankly, just putting together piecemeal suggestions, this idea that they're going to prosecute people that are found with parts of boats that they have a suspicion is being used for people smuggling won't go anywhere. I mean, how do you prove suspicion that someone is planning to use a life jacket for people smuggling? It's blowing in the wind, and there is no chance that if the Labour Party are really going to pursue this approach for the next 5 years, that the situation will be any better come the next general election.
Well, also, the other major European countries like France, Germany, they all have this scientific policy where you can check someone's age. And I don't want somebody like a 30-year-old man pretending to be 13 and then being entitled to education in this country in a school, because that's part of what's been happening. Older men being able to go to school in this country because they've said that they're a different age, which is one of the reasons why the Tories brought this whole scientific age check-in in the first place.
You couldn't write it, could you? There are only 3 countries at the moment in Europe that aren't actually using scientific methods to gauge the age of illegal migrants. That's us, Ireland and Serbia. So we are well and truly in a minority in this approach. Of course, the Conservatives did introduce measures that would allow these scientific methods to be used. They never actually put them into practice. So we have effectively been running a system since the crisis began, which really just gives discretion to Home Office officials to kind of gauge and take a feel for these people. And you're absolutely right. You hear ridiculous stories of blokes well into their 20s being put in school classrooms or being put into child services. So it's a ridiculous situation. It's a huge security threat. And these are, of course, undocumented men about whom we know absolutely nothing. They could very well have criminal backgrounds as well. I mean, the fact that they're coming into the country illegally is in itself a criminal background, but they could have other issues in their home country as well, other crimes that they've committed. And the fact that we're sticking them potentially in very close proximity to our children is absolutely scandalous.
Well, I suppose just because the Tories never used it, the fact it was available was a deterrent in itself, right? So you don't have... The idea of a deterrent is that you never use it. Nobody really wants to use a nuclear weapon. We just put it there to deter other countries from trying to take aim at us. So this was a working deterrent where somebody comes in via dinghy, you possibly will never become a UK citizen, which is good because then they think, well, maybe I'll try another route. And, of course, if you are a man who is a lot older than you think and actually than you are, you're going to say that you're younger than you are. And because mostly migrants, young children get to stay, there is, again, a temptation to want to lie if you're on the cusp of that. What do you think that they are trying to achieve with this? Because I'm struggling to find what they're trying to achieve to it. We are calling others to give us a different view on this, and most people don't want to support the notion. So what do you think they're trying to achieve? It doesn't make any sense.
It's unsupportable, really. I think what they're trying to achieve is kind of an international reputation. I think they're trying to garner kudos with European partners that are also suffering illegal migration crises. And I think they're hoping that by focusing on these international networks of people smugglers, they're able to garner this kind of goodwill from European partners. They're able to kind of highlight the work that they're doing and say, well, this benefits all of us. Because, of course, as we know, since Keir Starmer's taken over, his approach to this crisis has been saying that it can't be solved by Britain alone. It needs the cooperation of Europeans, and it needs cooperation with governments in countries of origin as well. So I think it's, again, indicative of a Labour Party that have their horizons well and truly on the international level, well and truly on these abstract ideas of international reputation, rather than actually doing what's in the national interest.
What do you think the French and the Germans would be seeing with this? Because the French have often accused us of being an actual pull factor, which is drawing people to their shores to get to ours. Well,
frankly, I think a lot of Europe are looking at Britain and thinking, brilliant, they're an absolute soft touch. we're now working on our migration pact. We've got our own problems. If we've got a country in the northwest of the continent that is prepared to acquiesce in the face of these waves and to effectively grant carte blanche amnesties to all those that come into the country illegally, then that really, really adds to the push factors from our country. It means that a lot of the problem ends up on Britain's shores rather than our shores. So let's let them go ahead down that route. It's absolutely calamitous decision for them to be making, but let's let them do it because it helps us.
Yeah, listen, I don't get it. I think it is wise to have something where you can check someone's age. I don't see what's wrong with that. And I also don't see what's wrong with telling people that if you come here via that way, it's now impossible for you to have citizenship. That's not taking your human rights away. It makes common sense to me, but I don't know what they're thinking. Robert, thank you very much. That's Robert Bates. He's the director of the Centre for Migration Control. What do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say, why on earth would you remove the ability to scientifically prove someone's age if they've come here via a dinghy? I don't get it. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say. But we are giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's all the details that you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. If you just joined us, welcome on board. It's just coming up to 17 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? This is GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes.
And I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What, even? What? Nelson? That's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick strip
Well,
hair.
maybe they just had, maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar. Maybe they thought, we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000.
No
15 grand.
Where's the hair come from? What part of the body?
His head, Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
You would all right, let me have a little look.
You would bid
it's very curly. I think it's his. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
that's creepy.
I was seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee Not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right.
She's
right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Earlier on GB News, is the Prime Minister seeking even closer ties with the EU?
Sir Keir Starmer is set to meet European leaders in Brussels.
A little perplexed as to why our closest friends and neighbours are choosing to target us.
This is a war that I would not fight if I were Justin Trudeau. The Canadian exports to the US are 21% of their economy. For US exports to Canada are 1% of GDP.
Yes.
It's a rounding error.
She mixes high street with high-end fashion, but the fact that Buckingham Palace put out who the designers are, maybe that is a good idea.
From 6, it's GB News Breakfast.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 22 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app. It is completely free. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? The government is watering down laws which have been aimed at blocking illegal migrants from obtaining citizenship and forcing them to submit to scientific age checks, which had meant that those who arrived here on small boats could almost never become UK citizens. Now, I can't see a problem with that. The Tory Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philpott called this a total capitulation to people smugglers. But what do you think? Why on earth would Sir Keir Starmer's government decide to remove those specific requirements? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour actually making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? Well, joining me now is the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Ben Habib, I will start with you. I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, I don't know why they're tampering with this. This is in our interest as a country to keep our ability to determine who should be allowed in, especially if they've come here via dinghy.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're setting aside the Illegal Migration Act, which was Suella Braverman's brainchild. And the Illegal Migration Act had a number of good things in it. The bill was actually much better than the act. The bill said the Secretary of State was obliged to detain and then deport anyone who entered this country illegally. When it became an act, it was already watered down so that the Secretary of State was entitled to detain and deport, which is a completely different thing, much weaker. But one of the central points of the Illegal Migration Act, or two of them, because I think they're worth mentioning given what Labour's up to, two of the central things was that if you came to this country illegally, you would never be given a right to gain British citizenship.
Yeah.
And that's quite a deterrent because otherwise they see the United Kingdom as a soft touch. If they get onto our shores, it's terribly difficult to deport them. And they've set that aside. Why is utterly beyond me, because they've just handcuffed themselves to an inability to deport. And then the second thing that the Illegal Migration Act did, which was, really worth having, was entitling British authorities to check the age of those people coming across the channel, because many of them identify as children, because that makes it easier for them to get asylum. And it also then exposes, frankly speaking, completely candidly, exposes our young ones to great danger, because if you get a 29-year-old, as happened on one occasion, a 29-year-old young male in a school with 15, 16-year-old girls, we don't know anything about this guy. For all we know, he holds these girls in antipathy. He's He could be a predator, he could be a criminal. He probably isn't, but he could be.
Yeah, but also he's too old, so he shouldn't be.
Yeah, and absolutely he shouldn't be.
The bottom line is, why would you, if you are
Absolutely.
genuine and you're saying you're 29, you wouldn't want to sit in a class full
So
of
he's a liar,
girls.
and he's already broken our laws. I mean, it's a really interesting point. I can't remember which. I think it was J.D. Vance who was asked in a congressional hearing, you know, how many of the people in this country illegally are criminals? And he said, well, all of them.
Yes.
Because they've broken into our country. And we don't seem to have that mindset. And we've got to get to that mindset. We've got to understand that anyone who's come here illegally is a criminal at day one.
Well, they've tried to change it to undocumented migration or whatever. Aaron Bastani, what do you think? Where are your thoughts?
Well, I'm curious as to Labour's motivation for changing the verification around age. I mean, it just seems sensible. Whatever your views are on this, if you want a very permissive regime or if you want something which is zero tolerance, I mean, age verification seems perfectly sensible, not least to allow people to have access to the kinds of resources we're talking about. Schooling, for instance. That seems perfectly reasonable. What I would say is, time will tell. You know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and Labour is saying they are going to make waves on this quite quickly. We'll know by the end of the year. The Tories, over several years, said a lot. They spoke very loudly, but the numbers only went in one direction. And what they said, of course, at the last general election is, give us more time because this is it. It'll start to work now, really, Gov, we promise. But they said that about so many things. So, given as well at the same time as all of this, you also had really significant increases in illegal migration, about 950,000, 900,000 net in 1 year.
Yeah.
I personally, and of course I would say this because I'm the person on the show who's on the left, I don't really buy anything that Suella Braverman says, frankly, because I think her tenure as Home Secretary, Priti Patel's tenure as Home Secretary, was so catastrophic, particularly, by the way, if you're on the right, that I don't see why you'd give them the benefit of the doubt. So I think with Labour, time will tell. Let's have this conversation. I know it's not great TV, but let's have this conversation in 6 months, 9 months, 1 year.
But time will tell. But I can tell. I don't need to wait for any time to work out that if you remove the ability to scientifically test someone's age and you remove the notion that if they arrive here illegally via a dinghy, specifically that way, they'll never get citizenship of this country, if you remove that, they are deterrents. So even if you're planning to smash the gangs, which is what he said he was planning to do, you are attracting more people here who think, well, actually, France and Germany would test my age, but if I get to the UK, they won't check my age, and I could also become a citizen. So, and most people end up staying, in particular, the children, 3/4 of them.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not opposed to the idea of age verification. The idea that we shouldn't take anybody who comes here illegally, I'm not necessarily entirely comfortable with that. I think you could have a very...
Well, via small boats.
You could have a very you could be very harsh with it, but I think you're always going to have exceptions, aren't you? So I don't know if that's necessarily the right way of...
Yeah, but the exception doesn't make the rule.
No, I agree with that, but that's the point, right?
I mean, I think that we've got to a stage now where legal migration, as you rightly point out, Aaron, is completely out of control. Yeah. Illegal migration, we should have zero illegal migration, right? I mean, that's the starting point. And we've got to a stage now where we are so being overwhelmed by the rate of change in our population, the rate at which this is happening, that I think we actually need now to suspend the issuing of any new right to remain in the United Kingdom, any new citizenship to any legally arrived migrants or illegally arrived migrants until we've got a grip of our borders.
Yeah,
I don't know why...
Ben, that sounds really great. How on earth would that realistically work? It's impossible.
That is the easiest thing to do. Anyone, you just have a blanket moratorium on issuing new British citizenship. That's it.
Yeah, but what about when people come in via dinghies?
No one gets British citizenship.
So they can come in, but they don't get British citizenship.
Well, this is a slightly different point. If they're here, they should be deported, is my view. But if for some reason we're incapable of deporting them, there should never be the possibility for them ever to get British citizenship. And I'm going further than that. I'm saying even people here legally should not be entitled to get British citizenship until we have got a grip of the rate of demographic change taking place in our population.
I hear you, and I agree with you, but I know that it's literally impossible with the number of human rights lawyers that are out there. I would go
But just pass a law. Just suspend all issuing of new citizenship.
Well, you can't just pass a law because you then need to go through all the stages within Parliament to get that law passed.
No, this lot won't do it,
no,
that's
they won't,
for sure.
So it's impossible.
But it is something I think Nigel Farage should be calling for and Kemi Badenoch should be calling for. I'm amazed that the pro-nation isolationist, pro-British, so-called right-wing parties haven't called for it, because we need to make sure that this problem doesn't become fixed in place. I read a report the other day which said that the long-term liabilities of the immigration we've taken on in the last 3 years is going to cost this country £61 billion. Just the long-term effect of the last 3 years' worth of immigration. We are going to go bust on the back of this, apart from all the cultural damage that's being done. We are going to go bust on the back of this if we don't get a grip of it. So we've got to have a pause, and we've got to just set the system straight before we start issuing out more citizenship.
I just still don't get it, though, the whole idea of removing these things. Surely, if he's going to focus on smashing the gangs, he should actually focus on his processes for smashing the gangs. I mean, what are they doing on that score?
Well, they're creating a bunch of new public agencies and a few new quangos. And,
all of which are all located in the UK.
Yeah. So what I would say as well is, quickly to Ben, you could have a moratorium on granting people British citizenship. I don't know why that would necessarily do anything with regards to changing demographics, because if you look at places like Qatar, the UAE, they don't basically give people who've been there citizenship or even the possibility of gaining citizenship. But as we know, people in Qatar, the UAE, are massively outnumbered by foreign workers. So I could foresee a situation where you have that moratorium, but you still have a profusion of work visas given out, like we have over the last 5 years, and you would still not be happy. That's not criticism of you, but my point is it doesn't necessarily solve the problem you're talking about.
But the minute you've granted citizenship, there's no reversal. And that's the problem. With the effluxion of time, once you're in the UK, you get citizenship. It's virtually automatic. So you have to stop that. That's the first step. It's very easily done. We've got to stop that. The other thing, I just want to go back to what Labour are doing. One of the other provisions of this new act that they're bringing in is making it illegal to threaten life in the Channel, and they're justifying that by saying, well, look, these smuggling gangs are endangering people's lives by taking them into the Channel. That, by the way, is already illegal under the Nationality and Borders Act, which Priti Patel brought in. But I think there's something more sinister going on here. By making it illegal to endanger lives in the Channel, which this new act is going to do in domestic law, they are going to prohibit any future government's ability to intercept dinghies in the Channel and require them to go back to France, because they will claim that that is endangering lives. And I actually think that's going to make it even more difficult to smash the gangs. And what we've got to discover in this country is not just the ability to deter and deport. We've got to discover the political will to stop the dinghies in the first place and return them before they get to UK shores.
I'm just not convinced by all of this. I think, frankly, what Keir Starmer needs to do is just get on with it, keep all the things that were in play, like Rwanda, like this illegal migration bill act even, that enables us to check the ages of people, and find other things to add to the arsenal, not detract from it. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in the second great British debate of this hour, I'm asking, will an anti-reform task force save Labour? But first, here are your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good afternoon to you. It is 33 minutes past 3. Our top story, Sir Keir Starmer has rejected suggestions the UK will rejoin the EU, saying the decision is settled as he faces calls to broker a customs union with the bloc. Speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to Chequers, the Prime Minister said, "I do want a reset of the relationship that does not involve a return to the European Union." Now, the two leaders met at the Prime Minister's country residence ahead of his visit to Belgium on Monday, where he will attend a summit of European leaders. 4 new laws have been introduced to tackle the threat of child sexual abuse images generated by artificial intelligence. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says AI has put child sexual abuse on steroids, and claims the UK will be the first country to make it illegal to possess, create or distribute the tools that create those abusive images. Owning software which can generate those pictures could result in a 5-year prison sentence, and users found to own an AI-made paedophile manual could face up to 3 years in jail. New laws to target smuggling gangs have been introduced in an effort to stop small boat crossings and migrant deaths in the Channel. The Home Office hopes new counter-terror style powers will enable authorities to dismantle how gangs operate. The government has announced millions of pounds worth of funding to tackle the root causes of illegal migration. 82 people have arrived in the UK on small boats today. Well, Donald Trump has once again suggested Canada should become the US's 51st state as a trade war with his biggest partners erupts. Canada and Mexico have responded with retaliatory tariffs after Trump ordered 25% taxes on their imports and 10% on goods from China. He says it's to hold those countries accountable for failing to halt drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Well, China says it will take necessary countermeasures to defend its legitimate rights and interests, and says trade and tariff wars have no winners. And finally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will visit the White House next week. He'll become the first foreign leader to do so since Mr. Trump returned to office. It follows a fourth hostage swap between Hamas and Israel as the fragile ceasefire in Gaza continues to hold. In Tel Aviv, celebrations took place as 3 hostages crossed back into the country. Meanwhile, 182 Palestinian prisoners, some serving life sentences, were freed from Israeli jails, many taken back to Gaza or the West Bank by bus. Those are the latest headlines. More from me at the top of the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest, thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now, through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland, some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll see spells of rain to start Monday morning, but temperatures up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Across much of England and Wales, then, it is a largely dry start to the day, perhaps even with some weak sunshine, but a cold start across the southeast. And through much of Monday, not much changes across much of England and Wales. We'll see some hazy spells of sunshine and the odd shower, but turning wet and windy across the northwest of Scotland, with coastal gales here too, and heavy rain that could turn quite persistent at times later on in the day. Otherwise, temperatures ranging 9 to even 11 degrees, so rather mild for the time of year. As we go through Monday evening, then we hold on to this wet and windy weather across northwestern Scotland, moving further into much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, persistent at times. But as we head into the week, higher pressure is going to be building, so plenty of dry and settled weather on the way, turning colder with some overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
ridiculous.
39 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. But it's time now for the second great British debate of this hour. And I'm asking, will an anti-reform task force save Labour? Now, Labour Together, a think tank which, with close ties to Number 10, has been turned into a machine to take on reform and will work with Downing Street to launch coordinated attacks on Nigel Farage and help Labour MPs campaign to keep their seats. Jonathan Ashworth, the organisation's CEO, has said that Nigel Farage screeches like a banshee when put under scrutiny. 2025 is the year when we shine the torch on him. You know what? I think perhaps if they focus on the policies that people don't like, then they might get somewhere instead of focusing on Nigel Farage. What do you think? So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, will an anti-reform task force save Labour? Joining me now is the former deputy leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the co-founder of Nawara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron Bastani, an anti-reform task force. It's not simply a waste of energy for the Labour Party.
Well, Reform are coming after them with regards to votes, as they are with the Conservative Party, so you can understand why they care about this. Though I should say, John Ashworth, who's the CEO now of Labour Together, of course, he was a Labour MP until July last year. He lost his seat to an independent. So the idea that this man is qualified and well-placed to lead on a project like this... Put it this way, I would sleep very well if I was Nigel Farage, knowing that Jonathan Ashworth was the man heading the task force, trying to put me out of the politics game. I'd sleep incredibly well. Yeah. Also, Labour Together, which was a real powerhouse ahead of the last general election. Lots of its people then became MPs. Lots of the policy ideas that Labour have, the few policy ideas that Labour have, come from Labour Together. They channel lots of funding. Very, very, very professional and very impressive, actually. Not that I agree with everything they did, but very impressive, objectively. Since it's been under the leadership of John Ashworth, you know, there's now talk of it sort of going bust. They're running out of money. He can't keep the show on the road. So I think this is maybe also John Ashworth trying to create demand for their services. You know, we're going to do this, therefore give us some dough, because I think otherwise Labour Together probably don't have a future.
Ben Habib.
I agree with all of that, which is, you know, detailed knowledge of how the Labour Party works and the inadequacies of Jonathan Ashworth, which I endorse. But I don't know what they mean by shining a light on Nigel Farage. Are they going to launch a whole series of ad hominem attacks? That won't work. Yeah. That's just going to move the electorate towards reform. Are they going to shine a light on his policies? Well, the electorate love reform's policies.
Exactly.
So it's very difficult, I think, for them to do any damage to reform. In fact, I think the more they shine a light on Nigel and Reform UK, the more the public are likely to side with Reform UK. The only hope the Labour Party have is that the polls continue to be split between the Conservatives and Reform, and that in the fight for the centre-right, actually Labour creep through the middle. And what Labour should hope for is a strong Tory party, a strong Reform UK, who battle it out with each other, split each other's vote, as it were, and let Labour through. Because, by all accounts, the electorate actually hate Labour. There's no popularity for Labour.
But the Tories and Reform are not, I would say Tories are not right-wing.
That's true as well.
They are. Yeah. If any two parties could merge, it'd be Labour and the Conservatives, not Reform.
Yeah. So this is a very good point you make. The notion that at least the Conservative Party that was in government was centre-right or pro-British. I prefer the term pro-British rather than globalist, which is where I see the Conservative Party having been and where Labour is. They're sort of globalist, you know, liberal globalist order. For the Conservative Party to have a hope in hell, frankly, at the next election, it has to discover its pro-British Conservative DNA. If it doesn't discover that, if it doesn't marshal it, show it, evidence it to the electorate, and doesn't come up with policies and a set of programmes that it's going to institute the minute it gets into government, the electorate aren't going to believe the Conservative Party. The challenge for the Conservative Party is, are you centre-right? That's the big question. And the challenge for Reform is, can you form a government and actually implement that which you say you believe in? Those are the two big challenges.
But also, apparently, Nigel Farage is set to make a big announcement at 5 o'clock as well, so that will be interesting. It's quite odd that the Labour Party have now accepted. I think this is an acceptance and an acknowledgement now that Reform UK are serious players in the political arena, as before they've been snubbed. And by the Labour Party doing this, they simply trying to further focus on them, I think.
Well, really interesting on exactly that point. Wes Streeting was speaking to the Fabian Society's annual get-together last week, and he talked about Farageism non-stop, barely mentioned the Tories, and then at the end he was asked, could Nigel Farage be the Prime Minister? And he said, you know what? I don't know why we talk about Nigel Farage so much. He's a media confection. I think we should talk about him less. And I'm thinking, did you listen to yourself over the last 60 minutes?
Well,
and all of that's great for Nigel.
Well,
all of that's great for
Well, he
Reform,
also
right?
called him a miserablest declinist. And so I urged them to listen to Sir Keir Starmer's speech when he became Prime Minister, when he told us that things would get worse before they got better. It was literally the most miserable speech I have ever heard. But if you are in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's rather unsettled across the central Mediterranean. Heavy showers, rain in parts of Spain as well, but there are some drier spells. So across the Canary Islands, we'll see some showers, but across Gibraltar and the south of Spain, some outbreaks of rain here. An area of low pressure will bring some heavy showers and thunderstorms across central parts of the Mediterranean, but there will be some drier spells in between. And then looking ahead, well, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it should be feeling pleasant in that sunshine too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimising being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say, 4 weeks before surgery, you're 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. 49 minutes after 3 o'clock. Time for World View. Let's travel over to the United States and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge. Paul, welcome. Now, apparently CBS had to hand over the full Harris interview to Donald Trump in his $10 billion lawsuit. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, do you remember last year there was an interview that Kamala Harris gave and talking about Israel and the administration's policies and what she would do with Israel. And the interview appeared to have been edited. In the trailer, she seemed very, very confused and word salady. And then when the actual show went out, she was very crisp and erudite and very precise about exactly what she would do with Israel. And obviously, the Trump campaign noticed that there was a bit of an anomaly there, and they have taken months and months and months, and they sued CBS, and now CBS have been forced to hand over the full, unedited, unexpurgated tapes. Now, because this is election interference. They're being sued for election interference, and now they've handed over, and so we will be able to see in the court of law whether or not, indeed, CBS did tamper after all and try to present perhaps a more favourable view of Kamala Harris and a $10 billion lawsuit. And the thing is, ABC have just had to pay out $15 million to Trump, and Meta, the people that own Facebook, they just handed $25 million just for closing Trump's accounts. So he is on something of a legal roll. So CBS I would be very surprised if they're not quaking in their boots at the idea of a $10 billion lawsuit.
Well, it'll probably shut them down, won't it? What about the tariffs? Because Trump has gone very serious on them, and I think he's doing the right thing. A lot of people criticising him, but what's the response in the US and how is it landing?
Well, look, there's a lot of panic because people just assume that Trump is pure hyperbole, but they forget that on this term, on his second term, he's hit the ground running. He's carrying out every single action that he promised to carry out. Canada, Mexico, and China, between them, I think represent 40% of all imports into the United States. And Trump, apart from the main story is he's saying that he wants them to control their borders and stop fentanyl and illegal immigration into the US. So he sees these, and so that's a great social and criminal point of view that he has. But also he's trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. If you can obviously make imported goods more expensive, then it actually spurs the local market, the domestic market that is tariff-free, to start hiring again so that you can compete with these cheap imports. So I don't expect these things to be crumbling anytime soon. In the press conference just before, you might have shown something there, in the press conference just before he launched these tariffs, and I think they're implemented from Tuesday, he was asked by the journalist, is there anything Canada can do at the moment? Is there anything Mexico can do to prevent these tariffs? And he's like, no. So they could phone up and just say, look, okay, we will absolutely make a non-porous border. We will stop the fentanyl. And he's still going, nah. So you have to, at some point, grasp the nettle if you want to protect your domestic manufacturing.
What about the third term there? Because apparently he's going to change the rules so we can have a third term. Is that what he's saying? Is this a reality?
Well, this is it. All these things get floated as like, oh, it's just hyperbole. Okay, we've got the tariffs. We've got Marco Rubio in Panama trying to get the canal back. It is now looking, there are legal scholars who are pointing out that there are mechanisms for Trump to have a third term. If he ran as a vice president, basically, is one of them. If he ran as vice president next time, he could theoretically get a 2-year term. If Vance ran as president, Trump runs as vice president, and then Vance steps down, he technically could get another 2 years.
Yeah, and it was initially that way before anyway, so it's 3 terms, and it actually changed back to 2. So if he does change it, then all credit to Trump. How old will he be then?
Absolutely.
He'd be like 100.
Well, he'd be 82. He's 78 now. He'd be 82 at the next election. It's his birthday's in June, isn't he? But yes, he's 78 at the moment. He'd be 82. I'm saying president for life myself. I just think that they should have some sort of Trump clause. Well,
if he carries on like this and he's going hell for leather, then everyone will want him. Thank you very much, Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast. Next up, my niggle on Labour repealing laws aimed at deterring migrants from coming to Britain illegally. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest. Thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland, some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll see spells of rain to start Monday morning, but temperatures up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Across much of England and Wales, then it is a largely dry start to the day, perhaps even with some weak sunshine, but a cold start across the southeast. And through much of Monday, not much changes across much of England and Wales. We'll see some hazy spells of sunshine and the odd shower, but turning wet and windy across the northwest of Scotland with coastal gales here too, and heavy rain that could turn quite persistent at times later on in the day. Otherwise, temperatures ranging 9 to even 11 degrees, so rather mild for the time of year. As we go through Monday evening, then we hold on to this wet and windy weather across northwestern Scotland, moving further into much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, persistent at times. But as we head into the week, higher pressure is going to be building, so plenty of dry and settled weather on the way, turning colder with some overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon. It is just coming up to 4 o'clock. Hello and welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Haviv, and also the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Coming up in my niggle, which is next, I saw Sir Keir Starmer was going to smash the gangs.
The way to make it work is to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade.
And instead, he's making things more attractive to them as Labour push for change in the Tories' Illegal Migration Act, which will mean that migrant adults can say that they are children. And most children migrants end up being allowed to stay. Why would Sir Keir Starmer be doing this when he previously had this to say?
The previous government were running an open borders experiment.
Surely, Prime Minister, you're now trying to run your own open borders experiment. So for the Great British Debate, I've been asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? You can also cast your vote on our GB News poll right now. Go to gbnews.com. Then, coming up, should the UK join the EU Customs Union? The Prime Minister is being urged by arch Remainer Sir Ed Davey to do just that. He's set to meet the European leaders tomorrow. But wouldn't this just be the first stage of dragging us back into the EU? So for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, should the UK join the EU Customs Union? But before all of that, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. Our headlines. The Prime Minister says the UK will seek a strong trading relationship with the US amid the threat of a looming trade war after a wave of new tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. Speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, the Prime Minister said in discussions he's had with President Trump, they've centred on a strong trading relationship. Now, Sir Keir's been urged to start talks on a new customs union with the EU, particularly by the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey. But after his meeting with Scholz, he ruled out the UK's return to the EU, saying the matter was settled. They met at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence, ahead of Sir Keir's visit to Belgium on Monday, where he will meet EU leaders in an effort to reset relations with the bloc. And all of this comes after Canada and Mexico announced retaliatory tariffs after the United States imposed import taxes on the two countries and China. Donald Trump ordered 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on goods on top of what already exists with China. He says it's to hold them accountable for failing to halt drug trafficking and illegal immigration. China says it will challenge the tariffs through the World Trade Organization. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum says they will retaliate. And the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canada will introduce countermeasures. Well, Donald Trump again suggested Canada should become the US's 51st state as fears of that trade war grow. He would like Canada to fall into line. Let's hear from the Canadian Prime Minister, then Justin Trudeau.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the US trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Well, Trump's defended the move on social media, saying the decades-long rip-off of America in regard to trade crime and poisonous drugs are over. He suggests that similar sanctions may be imposed on the EU.
The European Union charges us 20% plus a VAT tax, called a VAT tax, very similar, and it costs us an absolute fortune. We are treated so badly, and we have a tremendous deficit with the European Union, so we'll be doing something very substantial.
The UK is set to become the first country in the world to criminalise owning AI tools that create images of sexual abuse. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says offenders could face up to 5 years in prison under the new crackdown, and owning AI paedophile manuals would carry a 3-year sentence. Ministers are warning that AI-generated images are being used to blackmail children and push them into live streaming abuse. New laws to target smuggling gangs have been introduced in an effort to stop small boat crossings and migrant deaths in the Channel. The Home Office hopes the new counter-terror style powers will enable authorities to dismantle the gangs and their ability to operate. The government's announced millions of pounds worth of funding to tackle the root causes of illegal migration. 82 people have arrived on small boats in the UK today. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he intends to begin talks on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire on a visit to Washington tomorrow. The first phase, involving the release of hostages held by Hamas in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, has been holding. A fourth phase took place yesterday as 3 more Israelis were freed from captivity and 182 Palestinians, some serving life sentences, were freed from jail. Now, the second phase of the ceasefire is likely to be more contentious. It would involve the release of all living hostages in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. A woman's died in Australia and thousands have been forced to evacuate their homes after severe flooding in Queensland. Authorities say they could be the worst floods to hit the region for more than 60 years. Almost 40 inches of torrential rain's fallen since Friday. It's led to thousands of people in Townsville having to leave their homes for higher ground. The woman died when her dinghy that was rescuing her hit a tree and collapsed. Finally, to Pennsylvania in the United States and the annual Groundhog Day ceremony, where thousands of revellers have been gathering at Gobbler's Knob in the town of Punxsutawney to get weather predictions from a small furry rodent. It goes back, this tradition, to 1886, made famous through the film in 1993 featuring Bill Murray. So let's get Punxsutawney Phil's prediction for the end of winter.
It's Punxsutawney Phil!
I miss my coop, so I'm headed back down. There's a shadow up here. Get ready for 6 more weeks of winter this year. Woo!
And let's keep our fingers crossed that it will not be the same for the UK. That's it from me. More in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. What the hell are this Labour government doing? Why would you repeal rules which mean that people arriving here illegally via small boat have to submit to a scientific age check, otherwise face being treated as an adult? So basically, a man, and let's face it, it is mainly men who have arrived here by small boat, can say that he is 13, even though he may be 30, and then be placed in a school with young teenage girls in this country. You're having a laugh. So Keir Starmer said he would smash the gangs.
The way to make it work is to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade. And
not much of that happening, is there? And how will this latest move smash them? It'll only encourage them. I'm sorry, but I just don't get it. This was part of the legislation, the Illegal Migration Act, introduced by the Tories for good reason, and one of the very only things that they actually got done, which also meant that people who arrived here in this country illegally via dinghy could almost never become UK citizens. I think that's fair. I think that's fair enough. What do you think? Why should you be rewarded for breaking the rules? It will only encourage others to do the same. By deterring people to come to this country via dinghy, you save lives instead of helping to line the pockets of the people smugglers, an industry that is bankrupting this country, as the British taxpayer, already strapped for cash by this Labour government, are forced to fork out more to house these unwanted arrivals. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, said that the move was total capitulation to people smugglers and would make the UK the soft touch of Europe. Sure, the Tories made a mess of legal migration, letting almost 1 million in legitimately, more than this small island could cope with, and in such a short space of time. But the Illegal Migration Act was one good thing they actually did do. It didn't go as far enough, in my view, but having the power to clarify someone's age and making it nigh on impossible for them to become a citizen of this country if they enter it illegally via dinghy is effectively a deterrent. Why would you remove that? It makes no sense. In the first half of last year, more than 1,300 migrants were caught pretending to be minors. And when you consider that 3/4 of underage illegal migrants are granted asylum compared to half of the adults, you can see why it would be attractive to lie about your age, having entered illegally. If you could get away with it, why wouldn't an adult migrant try and pull a fast one? All other major European countries, including France and Germany, use medical tests and checks to determine age scientifically. So why would this current government choose to remove it? Keir talked about an open borders experiment by the previous government.
The previous government were running an open borders experiment. As the ONS sets out, nearly 1 million people came to Britain in the year ending June 2023. This is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident.
Yet he's running an open borders experiment of his own. More unwanted lunacy from the Labour government. What on earth is next? Back into the EU? But before we get stuck into the debates, here's what else is coming up today. Labour. They're planning to repeal laws introduced by the Conservatives that meant that those who arrived here on small boats could almost never become UK citizens. We'll be discussing why on earth they've decided to take away this deterrent. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK join the EU Customs Union? The Prime Minister is being urged by arch Remainer Sir Ed Davey to do just that, and he's set to meet with European leaders tomorrow. But wouldn't this just be the first stage of dragging us back into the EU? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the UK join an EU customs-style union? Then, in our second Great British Debate of this hour, I'm asking, is Donald Trump wrong to start a trade war? The US president's new taxes on Canada, Mexico and China have been met with retaliatory tariffs, with the UK government saying he is risking destabilising the global economy. So for the Great British Debate, the second one, I'm asking, is Donald Trump wrong to start a trade war? All of that is on the way. As ever, send me your comments, post your thoughts at gbnews.com/your say. Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Krish Kandiah. He's the director of the Sanctuary Foundation. Krish, thank you very much for joining me. Krish, what are your thoughts? Surely you don't want people to be crossing to get to this country via small boat, so it's dangerous. So surely a deterrent, like, saying if you do that, you're unlikely to get citizenship easily, and also saying that if you lie about your age, because obviously then you're entitled to certain benefits when you get here, it's imperative that we're able to check. What is wrong with that?
Hi, Nana. It's always a pleasure. Our family has hosted unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in our home. They were children fleeing from Sudan, and they needed all the support and help they could get. They've seen absolute trauma. So I've seen what it's like to be a victim of people smuggling and trafficking, and those children need our support. I actually agree that we do need a secure border, and we do need to go after not the people being trafficked and smuggled, but the smugglers. And that's why I really support the Labour Party's policy of going after the criminal gangs. They're punishing the right people. Previous governments have punish the wrong ones. It's like punishing someone for being raped rather than punishing a rapist. And this government this week have put in some very strong protections on our borders. They've made it almost like a terrorist offence to smuggle people to the UK. They're working hard to cut down the asylum backlog.
But Chris, it is illegal to come through our borders in that way. And, you know,
it's
like
not illegal.
I think...
law
But you made a comparison.
Winston Churchill himself, called the European Human Rights Commission, says it's not illegal to seek asylum in another country.
Yeah, but it is illegal to come via small boat. It is, and you know that.
Well, that was repealed by this new legislation. Well, it's not illegal to come that way. It's illegal. It's not illegal to claim asylum.
It's not illegal to claim asylum, but you are coming here via illegal means.
Well, there's no other way to come here to claim asylum.
But the argument is, you said it wasn't illegal, and it is. You're coming here via illegal means, therefore that is illegal. You know, I mean, but anyway, you said you compared this to the person who's being raped being blamed. That's not quite how it compares, does it really? Because people are paying... Sorry, let me just come to the point and then you can respond. People are paying to come here, so they are putting their hand in their pocket and paying a trafficker to come across this country. I mean, the children, I agree, they should be treated like children. They are children. They probably don't have a choice. But adults can pretend to be children and then get the benefits of being a child. Surely you would keep that bit of legislation. Why would you remove a scientific check?
We need to be clear here. To be trafficked here is being taken as almost like a slave and forced to work maybe in the sex industry or in the drug industry. To be smuggled is when you pay money for someone else to take you here. Those are two distinct things. And I'm sure you and I would both want to prevent people being trafficked here and treated as slaves. And if they were children, those were particularly people we'd want to look out for. And if someone was trafficked here and then couldn't go back home, we would want them to have a chance to be able to build a life again. They're innocent victims in this.
Yeah, but nobody's arguing that some people are trafficked, people are smuggled. The argument is that they are planning to remove the ability to check someone's age. Now, I'm just wondering why, and I'm seeing it whether you think that is a wise move for a government.
I do think we need ways to check people's age.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure the way we've been doing it in the past has been effective or fair. I've met a lot of children that are actually re-traumatised by the whole experience. It was more like an interrogation, which if you are a 14-year-old, you're going to find it very difficult. But look, I think we all agree we want to have control of our borders, and I think that's important. And I think the government is trying to do that. And you don't necessarily need a deterrent to do that. Like the Rwanda scheme was incredibly expensive. We managed to send one person there. They were planning only 1,000 people to be relocated to Rwanda in the first year. That was going to be a cost of about £350,000 a year. And then we had lovely pictures from Rwanda showing us what a lovely place it was. So how is it a deterrent to send someone to another country where they're going to be treated really well?
Well, it's a deterrent.
The Labour government
Is that a rhetorical question? It's a deterrent because they wanted to come to the UK and they've ended up somewhere else. So that's the deterrent. And the idea of the deterrent is, and people often criticise, say, well, there wasn't enough space there anyway. Well, once people realise you're serious, I can bet your bottom dollar that most people will stop coming over via small boat. And that's the point. We don't want people to risk their lives in the Channel coming via small boat. Do you?
I think that's something we can agree on. We definitely don't want people risking their lives.
So anything that deters
the best way to fight that is to go after the gangs that are making that route possible. And I do think, I mean, maybe we could have a both and. If you want a deterrent, sure, you can have that. I don't agree with that. But could we agree that going after the gangs is actually a good idea? And why not get behind that part of the legislation? Instead of saying, because you're not doing Rwanda, I'm not going to back anything.
No, that's not quite it. I think going after the gangs is part of the equation, but it's not the only solution. And that is how the Labour government appear to be seeing it, that they're going to smash the gangs and anything else around it, they're going to scrap. And I don't think that's a good idea. You try and smash the gangs, of course, but you also deter people from actually doing the crossing themselves. So if they think that even if they get here, they're not going to get citizenship, then that's a good deterrent, because it'll stop them getting on the boats or paying a people trafficker. And in terms of smuggling, well, if people think that the benefits aren't going to be there for them, then they may reconsider allowing them themselves to be smuggled, because I'm presuming that smuggling, you are convinced that you're going to get a better life and so you go along with it. People aren't literally plucked and then just chucked on a boat.
Sure. Look, I'm glad we found some common ground. Let's stop the gangs. That would be good. I think another deterrent possibility is something that the Labour government is trying to do, which is a fast and fair asylum process, so people aren't stuck in these expensive hotels that are no good for the refugee or the asylum seeker and no good for our economy. We need to get rid of that. And fast processing and more returns deals. I mean, that was one positive thing I thought the previous government did, was they increased the number of people from Albania that were able to be sent back if they didn't have a genuine asylum claim.
Yeah, well,
it makes sense to me to have more of those kind of places, those roles put in place.
Dr. Chris, I'd also like to see the removal of the ability to continue to appeal. So if your asylum has been declined, the British taxpayer should not now be forced to continue to pay for your repeated appeals. If you've been told that you have to go back, either if you want to appeal a second time, you pay for your own appeal, or you just go back, and you've got a limited time with which to do that. Because I don't see why the British taxpayer should continue to pay for appeal after appeal after appeal when someone's appeal has been declined. We're allowed to decline an appeal on good and legitimate reasons, so why should the person who's not even a British citizen be allowed to be funded by us as the taxpayer for repeated appeals?
I think there's a simple way we could reduce the number of appeals. That is give people the right support they need at the beginning. You know that most people that do apply on appeal actually get found to have a legitimate asylum claim.
Yeah, but some of them aren't
properly processed in the first place.
Yeah,
so if we did a better job at the beginning,
no, I'm not talking about the people
to appeal in the first place.
No, but I'm not talking about the people who come through and get through the appeal and who are allowed to stay. I'm talking about somebody who fails at their appeal and then is able to continue using the British legal system paid for by us, the taxpayer, to continue to repeatedly appeal. And it seems to be that they keep going until they get in. That needs to stop, surely. I do think that is something that the Labour government's trying to fix by streamlining the asylum process so that we don't have people prolonging this ad infinitum. So, again, I think you have some common ground with this Labour policy. Yeah, well, I don't think the Labour government has said that. They said they're going to smash the gangs. That's pretty much all they've said, and I haven't seen much of that, and I haven't seen much of anything. But thank you, Dr. Chris. I don't get why they're stopping the scientific testing of ageing. That makes no sense to me at all. And I do believe if you come via small boat, you should automatically understand that if you do it that way, it'll be very difficult to get citizenship. That'll deter people from taking the boats. Thank you very much, Dr. Chris Kandiar. He's the director of the Sanctuary Foundation. Good to talk to you. Right, 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should the UK join an EU customs-style union? This is GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs, you know. Remember, they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin, and the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak, friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, you know, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, you know, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. If you just tuned in, where have you been? You're halfway through the show now, but you're here now, so that's a good thing. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. 25 minutes after 4 o'clock, we are the People's Channel. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Let's see what we've got here. Sharon says, Chris, who was on earlier, is not a good foster carer. If he was, he'd be up in arms about grown men pretending to be children. That is a good point. I mean, Aaron, you made a similar point in the sense that actually checking someone's age scientifically is important.
Well, I think we should be giving sanctuary to particularly children fleeing war zones. Maybe people watching or listening disagree, but I think we should, specifically children. But in which case, you're helping those children by ensuring that the children are children.
Exactly. I agree with that. You agree with that, Ben?
I completely agree with Aaron, yeah.
This is so true. It's so true. What else have we got here? Lots of you. gbnews.com/keep them coming. I'll try and read as many as I can throughout the show. Susie says, never, ever trust Labour. Well, I mean, they got voted in with a very big majority, and people are seeing now what a Labour government actually means, and it doesn't sound like a lot of people seem to be enjoying it. There was one about you, Aaron Bastani. I need to find it. I think it was from Lucia Ball, who made a comment with regards to your comments earlier. Let me see what she said. Let's see if I can find it. I will find that. Come back to you on that. Oh, here it is. Lucia, she says, I'm at a loss why Bastani, who called for GB News to be shut down, is still being invited and paid to speak on the channel. Aaron Bastani.
Fake news. I've never said that, I'm afraid. You would, if you can find the citation, then that's most welcome. I believe in free speech. I think we should have a constitutional right to free speech. So... And by the way, as somebody who has a media company, we were pulled by YouTube, we were deplatformed, and lots of people who don't agree with our politics said this is outrageous, and I really, really admired that.
Yeah.
And actually, it's an attitude we all need to share in this country, I think.
There you go. Here. Well, it's time now for the Great British debate. I'm asking, should the UK join the EU Customs Union? Arch Remainer and leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, has called the Prime Minister to fire the starting gun on creating a new UK-EU customs union, which he says will put rocket boosters on the UK economy. What's wrong with these people? We voted to leave the customs union and free movement of people. It was a democratic mandate. The people accepted it. Now we're trying to live it. And also Donald Trump is currently slapping tariffs on people like he's coming to the EU next. Aaron Bastani and also Ben Habib joining me. Ben Habib.
Well, the EU is in deep financial trouble. Its economic engine, which is Germany, has had 2 years of recession. Just about every single country in the European Union has unsustainable levels of debt. It's going down the pan. It used to be quite a large component of British trade. Every year that passes, it becomes a smaller component of our trade. Meanwhile, the United States of America has gone from strength to strength. And under Trump's policies, it's going to turbocharge the US. You know, what happens to business and personal finances when you deregulate and cut taxes? They only do one thing. they go up, right? So you're going to get a resurgent US, you're going to get a rapidly growing US, and what Europe, and particularly, I don't really care that much about Europe, but I do care about the United Kingdom, what our Prime Minister needs to wake up to is that with the policies that Trump is deploying, unless we follow suit, capital is going to leave the UK to go to the States and invest in their companies. Our bright and young will leave our country and go to the US to make more money there. So unless we adopt American policies now, we will go down the pan with the European Union. President Trump has fired the starting gun, using Davies' expression, has fired the starting gun on nations doing the best for themselves. And we need to get on that bandwagon. Our Prime Minister needs to stop being part of the liberal global Europhilic order, and he needs to recognise that his primary and only duty is to the United Kingdom and the people of this country.
Aaron Bastani.
That's it. Ben Habib's pitch, Prime Minister of the UK. Look, if we were to join a customs union, it probably would, maybe you disagree, it probably would bump up growth a little bit. Not by much, right? If you're talking about the number one issue for growth in this country, 2, 3, 4, it's down there, 10, 11, 12. It's not even in the top 10, in my opinion. But it would. And the Treasury, which effectively still runs this country and tells politicians what to do, and it takes a very brave politician to defy the Treasury, will say, well, look, if we join the customs union, it means that GDP growth will be 0.2% higher per year. They have some modelling. Yeah. And invariably, the Chancellor will say, OK. Now, the problem for Labour is, of course, this is deeply unpopular. They found that out in 2019, trying to even go anywhere near this is not good. Keir Starmer, to his credit, knew that in the last general election and went absolutely nowhere near the EU question. So politically, that's an issue for Labour. But the reason why this is happening, in my opinion, is because Treasury orthodoxy. Very quickly, you had this pharmaceutical plant that AstraZeneca were going to build in a deal that was overseen really by Jeremy Hunt. I don't say very many positive things about Jeremy Hunt, but this was one of them. And Labour came in. AstraZeneca, we're going to get 90 million. Labour said you're only going to get 40 million from the taxpayer. AstraZeneca left. The claim is that the Treasury said, knock it down. They won't mind. They did mind. And for a couple of tens of millions of pounds, this is a huge issue of national security where we're now exposed. Don't always listen to the Treasury. And that's where this is coming from. The Treasury are virtually invariably wrong. They're hooked on this diet of large borrowing, large taxation, and wealth redistribution. They're hooked on a diet of immigration in the belief that it boosts our GDP. They're not looking at GDP per capita. They're not looking at the dramatic impact that large borrowing, state intervention, taxation has had on the private sector. And the Treasury is the infected organism, and the OBR gives succour to the Treasury, the Office of Budget Responsibility, which Labour is about to give legislative protection to. It's going to make it a requirement for chancellors to get the support of the OBR for a budget. And so this orthodoxy, which is killing the United Kingdom through the Treasury and the OBR, is going to be nailed into place by Labour. Yeah, and I'd say even more amusing is not only are Labour giving more power to the OBR, which personally I would scrap, they're also creating a new quango to ensure, fair procurement, and that's what I thought we had a national procurement agency, but whatever. So, look, this is the story of Britain over the last 25 years. Governments do something because the Treasury tells them to do so, because it's in the short-term interest. It might, the next quarter GDP might go up, the next year GDP might go up, and maybe it would. Immigration is a great case in point, right? Our economic model is so busted that we had to have massive immigration after 2020 because there is no endogenous growth in our country's economy. That's true, but these short-term fixes, actually, in the long term, don't lead to a prosperous, safe, happy country. Are you sure you're not right-wing, Aaron? No, I'm just...
I feel you switched.
Tony Benn, no, but
he switched.
Tony Benn...
Common sense.
I mean, he spoke unadulterated common sense.
Tony Benn would have said the exact same thing about the Treasury. Yeah. The Treasury is a real problem to democratic politics in this country.
So, coming back to the issue, though, of whether we should be joining an EU customs union, what do you think?
I think you could have a bespoke customs union, which is quite minimal, which would be just for the UK. There was talk of us joining the EFTA with Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein. I think that's probably unwise because the UK is a 68 million person economy. You probably want your own thing. And I think that's sensible. But that is effectively, we can call it a customs union, but that is effectively just a trade agreement of some kind, which is in the interest of the UK that will be negotiated by our government. You would want something. and it would benefit us. And but
the problem is, if we do like an EU customs union, Trump is talking about tariffs against the EU. He said they treated him very badly. Do we really want to assign ourselves to this?
And Trump recognises, you know, we've had unbridled global trade. Trump recognises that actually what that means is offshoring jobs from the US to China and other places. And when you run a very significant deficit with a country, like we do with the European Union, actually you're damaging British producers, you're damaging the British economy. One of the biggest problems being part of the EU was that we had a £100 billion a year deficit. We've got to stop it. Trump's right.
Well, OK, what do you think? GBNews.com/your say. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, my second Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Donald Trump wrong to start a trade war? First, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. Our top stories. The Prime Minister says the UK will seek a strong trading relationship with the US as North America moves closer to a trade war. He was speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to Chequers ahead of meeting all 27 EU leaders at a summit in Brussels on Monday. He'd be the first Prime Minister to do that since Brexit. Now, Sir Keir has been urged to start talks on a new customs union with the EU in an effort to reset relations with the bloc.
What I want to see is strong trading relations, and in the discussions that I've had with President Trump, that's what we have centred on in those strong trading relationships. So it's very early days. I've been very clear since I became Prime Minister that I do want a reset of the relationship between the UK and the EU. That does not involve a return to the European Union. We had a referendum here on that, and that matter is settled.
The Prime Minister's comments come after Canada and Mexico announced retaliatory tariffs after the United States imposed import taxes on the two countries and China. Donald Trump ordered 25% tariffs on imports from US neighbours and 10% on goods from China. He says it's to hold them accountable for failing to halt drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Well, there's been a response. China says it will challenge it through the World Trade Organization. The Mexican Prime Minister Claudia Sheinbaum says she has ordered her economic minister to implement tariffs to defend Mexico's interests. And Canada, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, has announced 25% in response to the United States. Countermeasures. 4 new laws have been introduced to tackle the threat of child sexual abuse images generated by artificial intelligence. The measure will see the UK become the first country in the world to make it illegal to possess, create or distribute the tools that create abusive images. Owning the software could result in a 5-year prison sentence with a 3-year jail term for possession of paedophile manuals. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says AI has put child sexual abuse on steroids. And Barclays says the technical problems that left some customers unable to access their accounts for days has been resolved. The IT glitch, which began on Payday Friday, left some people unable to pay their bills, in some cases their tax bills. Well, Barclays has apologised and says those delayed payments have now been processed, and HMRC confirmed that there is a deadline, a payment deadline extension until the 1st of March. That's it for the moment. I'll be back with more at 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest, thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now, through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland. Some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll see spells of rain to start Monday morning, but temperatures up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Across much of England and Wales, then, it is a largely dry start to the day, perhaps even with some weak sunshine, but a cold start across the south east. And through much of Monday, not much changes across much of England and Wales. We'll see some hazy spells of sunshine and the odd shower, but turning wet and windy across the northwest of Scotland, with coastal gales here too, and heavy rain that could turn quite persistent at times later on in the day. Otherwise, temperatures ranging 9 to even 11 degrees, so rather mild for the time of year. As we go through Monday evening, then we hold on to this wet and windy weather across northwestern Scotland, moving further into much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, persistent at times. But as we head into the week, higher pressure is going to be building, so plenty of dry and settled weather on the way, turning colder with some overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Also, don't forget, download the GB News app. Right, though, we're giving you a chance, though, to win in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's how.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed, but it's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Donald Trump wrong to start a trade war? The US president announced that he would impose 25% import taxes on goods from Canada and Mexico, as well as a 10% tax on China. However, since then, the 3 countries have vowed retaliation. In the meantime, the UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has warned that the imposition of tariffs risks having a really damaging impact on the global economy. But really, perhaps she should keep her mouth shut, because he hasn't announced anything for us here in the UK. What do you think? I'm asking, is Donald Trump wrong to start a trade war? Joining me now is former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron Bastani, what do you think?
Well, Donald Trump, responding to Yvette Cooper, would say, I don't care about the global economy. And that's simply it. I mean, if we have tariffs now between major economies, there will probably be stagnation or maybe even a slight decline in global trade. But Donald Trump doesn't care about that. He cares about maximising US GDP and having lots of stuff which is manufactured overseas and made in the United States. On some things, I think he's very wrong. For instance, he seems to think that Taiwan, which is this global epicenter of making integrated circuits, basically that's US companies which outsource their production there. That's not actually true. But for many things, that is the case. And he would like production which is presently in Canada or Mexico to be on the other side of the border. Now, that will probably work for some American workers. It'll work for some companies. But it also won't work for some American consumers, because in the short term, you probably get a bit of inflation. Maybe in the long term it works, but in the short term, no. So there are benefits and there are costs here, like anything. But I think, for me, the most interesting thing is that response of the global economy. Why does Donald Trump care about the global economy?
And why should Yvette Cooper speak right now? He's not talking to her directly. She should close her mouth and wait till he speaks to the UK as to what he's going to do. This is not going to be beneficial to us. Why do these people keep doing this?
But Yvette Cooper saying what she said reveals that she's really a globalist. She's not thinking about the United Kingdom. And some of Trump's policies undoubtedly will be hurtful to the UK, because he is, as Aaron's correctly pointed out, putting the US first. And that's his job. I wish our politicians could take a leaf out of his book. But here's the thing about trade, global trade. When you trade globally, what you're doing is damaging production in your own country.
That's right.
And you're perhaps helping consumers because you're getting the product cheaper from abroad. But what we've had is far too much global integration over the last 25 years. We have, for example, through funding China and buying all its cheap tat without restriction, made China into a geopolitical superpower. It now can challenge us in the West militarily.
Well, you saw what it did with the PPE. We didn't have any facilities here to make it, so they could charge whatever they wanted. So
Absolutely,
we were at
and
the
they
mercy.
exploited us.
Yes, of course.
And now they've got fifth-generation fighters, they've got stealth ships, they can take Taiwan, and all of that has been enabled by us. And the same applies to Russia. Germany became dependent on Russian oil, and so on. And there are many examples of where rampant global trade, which is effectively a bit like reverse immigration, because instead of bringing immigrants into your country to do those jobs cheaply, you're effectively getting people from foreigners abroad to do it. And what Trump is saying is that's enough.
Yeah, he's saying bring trade in-house, and if you want to come to send your products here, we'll charge you.
We'll charge you.
You know what's happening though? A lot of the companies are now deciding, OK, well, we'll have a base in the US to avoid tariffs, export tariffs. And that is exactly...
And that's precisely it.
He's got it.
He's got it, and we've got to do the same in the UK.
Well, Yvette Cooper seems to think it's going to affect global tariffs, though, but obviously it will do. But then why should we care? Really, we should be looking at our own economy, not the global economy, and bringing production here. But if you are in search of an escape and you're looking for some winter sun, here is the forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's rather unsettled across the central Mediterranean. Heavy showers, rain in parts of Spain as well. But there are some drier spells. So across the Canary Islands, we'll see some showers. But across Gibraltar and the south of Spain, some outbreaks of rain here. An area of low pressure will bring some heavy showers and thunderstorms across central parts of the Mediterranean. But there will be some drier spells in between. And then looking ahead, well, plenty of sunshine on offer. And it should be feeling pleasant in that sunshine too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And yeah,
so yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad. But
because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Maritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the Bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? What? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that Bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics, and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. This show, however, is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Joining me now, David Barn, he's from Watford. David, your thoughts. Donald Trump, is he wrong to start a trade war?
Well, one thing you've got to remember about Donald Trump is he shoots from the lip every time, and all he's concerned about is America. But as Ben and Aaron said, all it means is American companies who manufacture, say, in Taiwan will open a base in America, which is good for their economy. So in the short term, no, but in the long term, yes. Maybe Keir Starmer and Labour, who have this great idea of growing the UK economy, can actually take something from that and say, OK, let's make tariffs here, make it more advantageous to open up manufacturing bases back in the UK. Because let's face it, we don't have a manufacturing base in the UK. We don't even have a service industry in the UK anymore. It's been slowly eroded. So maybe we should take a leaf out of their book, Americans' book, and say, let's start putting Britain first.
You'd think she would, David, but sadly she claimed that Donald Trump was affecting the global economy, so she's thinking about everybody else again.
Yeah. If that Cooper, the lady who interviews her husband, or her husband interviews her and avoids all the important questions in life, I actually don't trust her, anything she says. And that's just my personal opinion, not GB News' opinion.
Yes. Well, David Barham, you're so good. He's getting so good at this, he's even helping out Ofcom. Thank you very much, David Barham.
My pleasure.
He's there in Watford. Lovely to talk to you. He's our great British voice. Remember, you can be a great British voice as well. Go onto my Facebook page and let me know. But joining me, Aaron Bastani and Ben Habib. Lots of you getting in touch with your views. We're talking immigration. Catherine, she says all these charities would go out of business if we stopped asylum. I wonder how they're funded exactly. We've had our fill of refugees, no more. Well, come on, be fair, Catherine. Refugees escaping conflict, that's, serious refugees. I feel we should obviously, house and find refuge for. But I'm just concerned about these people coming over via small boats and Keir Starmer changing the rules.
I mean, we do have arrangements for people to apply for asylum in the UK from where they are. We don't need people coming from France, which last time I looked was a relatively safe country, though it is deteriorating fast. You know, we don't need them coming here.
This is Dubbing says, I wonder what would happen if we tightened our belts and stopped spending on unnecessary things, but then doesn't go on to say what that unnecessary thing would be. Margaret says, I think it would be a good idea if civil servants at the Treasury, Home Office, etc. weren't so secure in their careers. 1 or 2 high-earning managers should be fired if they're not doing the government's bidding. That would shock them to the core. They'd realise just who is in charge, and it wouldn't be them. Trump would do it. That's kind of Donald Trump saying that civil servants should get back to work in the office.
Good. Yeah. Sack them and get them back to work, those who are left.
Well, they wouldn't want to do the job, would they? And they've got beautiful pensions as well, haven't they?
Well, what's really interesting is in local government, you have council officers who have pensions, holiday pay, sick pay. We'll talk about one of those later on. Councillors don't get pension contributions. You might have a really hard-working councillor, does loads of casework, they get a real pittance, and then you have somebody whose job it is to do stuff and often not very good.
Yeah. It's the bureaucracy in charge, isn't it?
It's utter madness. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works. It doesn't work, does it? Send us your thoughts, post your comments. gbnews.com/your say. Listen, coming up, Nigel Farage has a special announcement in a couple of moments' time. So I'm looking forward to hearing what that is. We will be discussing that with my panel. Plenty more still to come, including all the very latest on Donald Trump's trade war. First, let's get an update with the weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest, thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now, through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland. Some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll see spells of rain to start Monday morning, but temperatures up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Across much of England and Wales, then, it is a largely dry start to the day, perhaps even with some weak sunshine, but a cold start across the southeast. And through much of Monday, not much changes across much of England and Wales. We'll see some hazy spells of sunshine and the odd shower, but turning wet and windy across the northwest of Scotland, with coastal gales here too, and heavy rain that could turn quite persistent at times later on in the day. Otherwise, temperatures ranging 9 to even 11 degrees, so rather mild for the time of year. As we go through Monday evening, then we hold on to this wet and windy weather across northwestern Scotland, moving further into much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, persistent at times. But as we head into the week, higher pressure is going to be building, so plenty of dry and settled weather on the way, turning colder with some overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British Giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next hour, the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. In the Great British Debate, I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? The government has repealed rules introduced by the Conservatives, that's their plan, that have meant that those who arrived here on small boats could almost never become UK citizens, despite previous statements like these.
The way to make it work is to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade. The previous government were running an open borders experiment.
But it seems Sir Keir Starmer is running an open borders experiment of his own. So on the GB News poll, I'm asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? You can cast your vote, gbnews.com/your say, or go to our website. Donald Trump's tariff war has also been met with fury. From Mexico, Canada and China, who have all pledged retaliatory tariffs, whilst the UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has also hit out at Trump, saying that the tariffs could have a really damaging impact on the global economy. We'll have all the reaction to this. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. Our headlines. The Prime Minister says the UK will seek a strong trading relationship with the US as North America moves closer to a trade war. He was speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to Chequers, his country residence, ahead of meeting all 27 EU leaders at a summit in Brussels on Monday. He'll become the first Prime Minister to do that since Brexit. Well, Sir Keir has been urged to start talks on a new customs union with the EU in an effort to reset relations with the bloc.
What I want to see is strong trading relations, and in the discussions that I've had with President Trump, that's what we have centred on in those strong trading relationships, so it's very early days. I've been very clear since I became Prime Minister that I do want a reset of the relationship between the UK and the EU. That does not involve a return to the European Union. We had a referendum here on that, and that matter is settled.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says any potential pain caused by his trade war with Canada, Mexico and China will be worth the price. Canada and Mexico have announced retaliatory tariffs after the US imposed 25% import taxes on goods from the two countries and 10% from China. He posted on social media that the decades-long rip-off of America in regard to trade, crime and poisonous drugs is over. Well, China says it will implement countermeasures to defend its legitimate rights and interests. Mexico and Canada acted overnight.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the US trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
4 new laws have been introduced to tackle the threat of child sexual abuse images generated by AI. The measure will see the UK become the first country in the world to make it illegal to possess, create or distribute the tools that create abusive images. Owning the software could result in a 5-year prison sentence with a 3-year jail term for possession of so-called paedophile manuals. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says AI has put child sexual abuse on steroids. Barclays says the technical problems that left some customers unable to access their accounts for days have now been resolved. The IT glitch, which began on Friday, left some people unable to make transactions or, in some cases, pay tax bills. Barclays has apologised. It says those delayed payments have now been processed and it will make sure no customers are left out of pocket. HMRC has extended the deadline for payments until March the 1st. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he intends to begin talks on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire on a visit to Washington tomorrow. Well, the first phase involved the release of hostages held by Hamas in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. The latest release took place yesterday. 3 more Israelis freed from captivity and 182 Palestinian prisoners, some serving life sentences, freed. They were taken to Gaza and the occupied West Bank. The second phase of the ceasefire, though, likely to be more contentious because that would involve the release of all living Israeli hostages in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners. But the key bit, a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. A woman's died in Australia. Thousands have been forced to evacuate their homes after severe flooding in northern Queensland. Authorities say it could be the worst flooding in the region for more than 60 years. Almost 40 inches of torrential rain has fallen since Friday, leading to thousands of people in Townsville evacuating their homes for higher ground. The woman died when the dinghy rescuing her hit a tree and capsized. And to Pennsylvania, in the US, and the annual Groundhog Day ceremony, where thousands of revellers gather at Gobbler's Knob in the town of Punxsutawney to get weather predictions from the groundhog. The tradition, which goes back to 1886, was made famous with the Bill Murray film in 1993. Punxsutawney Phil makes predictions for whether it will be a longer winter or an early spring.
It's Punxsutawney Phil!
I miss my coop, so I'm headed back down. There's a shadow up here. Get ready for 6 more weeks of winter this year. Woo!
We can only hope it won't be the case here in the UK. That's it for the moment. More from me at 5:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, Donald Trump's tariff war has been met with fury from Mexico, Canada and China, who have all pledged retaliatory tariffs, whilst the UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has also hit out at Trump. I don't know why she's decided to hit out at Trump. She should not say anything and wait to see what happens, but she has. and she said that tariffs could have a really damaging impact on the global economy. Why should she be concerned about the global economy and not the UK economy and focusing just on us, really? I don't know. But then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to clamp down on activist lawyers? This comes as left-wing lawyers and Green groups are said to be already plotting legal challenges to Rachel Reeves's plan for a third runway at Heathrow. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to clamp down on activist lawyers? I mean, they get involved in everything, including migration issues. Also, Supplement Sunday, the panel and I will discuss some of the stories that have hit their eye. Send me your thoughts as ever. Post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So Donald Trump's trade war, it's big news. It's escalated as both Canada, Mexico and China have imposed retaliatory tariffs on American goods. China is saying it will file a lawsuit on the with the World Trade Organization again in protest against American import taxes. Well, perhaps somebody should maybe file a lawsuit against China for COVID. Let's go with that one. And then obviously what they're doing in Africa and other parts of the world. But hey, let's not mention the Uyghur Muslims either. Crumbs. But for his part in the US president, his tariffs against Canada, Mexico and China were necessary, he said, to hold them accountable for their promises of halting illegal immigration and stopping poisonous fentanyl and other drugs into America. And he added that any pain that the US feels from the regulatory tariffs will be worth the price. Well, here to tell us more is the CEO of MCQ Markets, Kurt Hopkins. Kurt, surely this is a good move. A president who's prepared to put his people first, invite business into his country, but charge others if they plan to import goods, making it more expensive. So American people would be more potentially interested in buying American products or things built and made in their countries. Isn't this a good thing for America?
It might be, and I think we'll find out quite quickly. It is very, very interesting because we're in the auto business. We're all about, providing people an opportunity to invest in iconic cars. And so we do follow what goes on in the auto industry very, very closely here across North America. And I think the big challenge will be price rises. And as you know, in the auto industry, it's a very integrated industry across North America. If you spend any time in Ontario, Southern Ontario, and in Michigan, you'll see that the supply chains are just fully integrated, and it's been that way for decades. So how you unpull that and take that apart remains to be seen. I've seen estimates of saying a $3,000 per car increase in prices. That I've also seen stats saying that it could be a 75% increase in labor would be required for this industry. It could be a $50 billion investment to build these plants back in America. So I suspect that this is about negotiation. If you do read the executive order closely, and I think it will certainly be challenged in court here as well, because, and I think that's certainly going to happen. But if you look at it closely, the situation with Canada, there's about a 3-week bake-in period. So I suspect over the next 3 weeks, there's going to be lots of talk back and forth. But of course, politically, it is a difficult time for the Canadians and the Mexicans to respond, because you have a new government in Mexico and in Canada. They're headed toward an election. You've got a lame duck prime minister who's on his way out. So it's going to be, very entertaining news over the coming weeks. And let's see if the people that think that trade wars are great ideas are victorious, or if people worry that it's just effectively a 25% tax increase upon Americans are right. So we will see that soon.
Well, what about China saying that it's going to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization again in protest against American import taxes? Surely China, they literally have the world at their feet. China can pretty much levy any charge against everyone because they supply literally the entire globe.
Well, I think it's very interesting saying that. And, if we look back to when the members of the World Trade Organization let China in earlier in this century, that may have been harked back to that as a big mistake, because at that time China should have been an open economy, should have been open for imports, but clearly that didn't happen. They kept imports out, and so therefore they were able to be the workshop of the world, to really use mercantilism effectively to create very low cost products, and then basically build themselves to become that factory place of the world. So I think they are in a strong position. It is ironic because I don't think they probably fully comply with WTO regulations, but I'm not sure that the WTO is really where things are at right now and where the battles are going to be fought. I think the battles are going to be fought through negotiations, through politics, and through local courts in the U.S.
I don't think they've got the teeth for it either. I don't think they've got the power to back anything up, really.
Absolutely.
What about the tariffs against Canada and Mexico? Because President Trump is also talking, and presumably in particular with Mexico, because of people coming across the border. And, of course, he's talking about fentanyl, which has been a bit of a problem in the US, although I'm not sure how much is actually trafficked from Mexico and Canada, if he was going to apply that to them. But is he right to slap tariffs on them? Increased up to 25%?
I think it is, it does boggle the mind what his real rationale is, to pick fights with your closest trading allies. But let's see what he really wants to achieve. I mean, one could understand how he wants Mexico to tighten up on the border on their side and to keep potential asylum seekers away from the border so they can't claim for asylum. And so I think that's a big part of that negotiation. With respect to Canada, hard to know what he really wants to achieve. I mean, is he really wanting to, make Canada into the 51st U.S. state or not? That would be kind of ironic, given the fact that Trump doesn't like wars. So let's see what happens there. I'm not sure really what he's driving at, other than trying to stir things up.
Yeah, but do you think it's a good tactic, though, in a way? Because even though often when I was younger, I'd ask my dad, can I have £100? What I really wanted was 20. So I would ask a ridiculous amount, and then what would come would be a negotiation. I'd tend to get more than I actually wanted, that I really, really wanted. So do you think it's kind of like a negotiation tactic so that he can, just kind of play ball and get something out of these countries?
Surely, yeah. I'm sure that's part of what he does. High pressure tactics are all part of his operating procedures, and so I'm sure that's the case. But it'll be really interesting to see, does he really believe his own rhetoric about tariffs? If he does, and he does, these things truly get fully implemented in the coming weeks, and we do start to see prices rise, we start to see economic output fall. You're already starting to see an impact on crypto prices over the weekend. You're starting to see rumors that all the banks are starting to short major American stocks. So if you start to see carnage in the market, the question is, how long will he really stand this? Because he does tend to view his success or failure based upon the price of the Dow Jones. So let's see what happens there. I suspect it's a lot of bluster, it's a lot of negotiation, and hopefully he doesn't trip over something and cause too much damage. And I think that negotiation will play out, and it'll be quite entertaining and newsworthy, certainly over the coming weeks.
That's what we love about him. He sure is entertainment. Kurt Hopkins, thank you very much. He's the CEO of CQ Market. It's really good to talk to you. Very interesting stuff, isn't it? Fascinating. Well, joining me now is the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. I think his tactics are genius. I love it. I love the turmoil that he's created, the uncertainty with all these people who are sitting comfortably with their deals, and now he's making them have a rethink, in particular China, because I would be looking to China saying, well, where's the recompense for the pandemic, for goodness sake? Yeah. We all forked out billions because of a virus that absolutely, in my view, was man-made, or something weird happened in terms of how it was leaked out. And in the end, it infected the world, and economies shut down as a response, I think. And I think it was potentially the way it was all handled in China and hidden is part of the reason why we got into such a major mess with it. Ben Habib.
I mean, it's interesting going back to the pandemic, because initially it was regarded as a conspiracy theory that this virus had escaped from a lab in Wuhan. And then actually we discovered it probably did escape from a lab in Wuhan.
Seemed pretty obvious to me.
And we called it the Chinese virus to start with. And then, of course, all the wokey lot said you can't do that because it's prejudicial against China. But we call the Spanish flu because it came from Spain. What's
German measles.
German measles.
Don't know whether they are German.
But one thing we haven't talked about in the previous segment is these tariffs are being used by President Trump to secure his country as well. It's not just about trade. Between the 6th hole and the 18th hole when he was playing golf, he managed to get Colombia to accept a flight of illegal migrants that were being deported. And, I mean, that was quite a cool thing, wasn't it? He threatened sanctions and a whole load of other measures. By the time he finished his round of golf, the flight was on its way. And he's right to do it with Mexico. I mean, they've got 10 million people in the United States of America, 2 million a year arriving illegally across that border. That has to stop. And if the Mexicans won't stop it, well, they've got to be sanctioned for it. And we should take a leaf out of his book. What we should say to France is, we're not going to give you any more money. We're going to remove your fishing licenses if you don't stop this illegal trade of people across the channel. And let's see how they react to that. And if that results in a trade war, so be it, Nana, because we've got to protect ourselves first and foremost.
But how do you feel about Yvette Cooper saying that Trump is risking the global economy by doing this? You know, some would say that she should be focusing on the economy here, even though the global economy has an effect with us here. The bottom line is, I don't even know why she should open her mouth at this stage when we're on a very shaky ground when it comes to a trade deal with the US. I don't get it.
She should just say the UK economy. The global economy obviously is of absolutely no importance whatsoever to Donald Trump. Probably will have some impact on the global economy. It's a big problem for exporters. So if you're Germany, Taiwan, China,
Exactly right.
South Korea, you're looking at major problems. Think about poor old Germany, Nana. You know, these guys mastered the diesel engine like nobody else for a century. And now they've lost Russian gas. Obviously, the Eurozone has just been a calamity for the last 10 years, really, if not more. And the Chinese are coming for their lunch with regards to industrial exports. BYD cars, they look great and they're really cheap. I don't know why you'd buy a Volkswagen anymore. And then on top of that, you're going to have US tariffs on German cars going into the US. And if you're Germany, that's really, really bad. Things are going from bad to worse for Germany. So it's going to be tough for some countries. But I think if you're the British Home Secretary, by the way, as well, why is the Home Secretary talking about it?
Exactly.
The Chancellor, I get. Why is the Home Secretary talking about it?
See, I did a monologue yesterday and I said, you know, hopefully we'll get a good trade deal if the Labour front bench can keep their mouths shut. And now they're speaking again. Before it was name-calling, and now it's coming out with just utter nonsense. And I don't know.
Well, they loathe Starmer, don't Starmer loathes Trump. They loathe Trump. They can't get their heads around the fact that we've got a Trumpian president. They can't get it.
Well, listen, today with us coming up next, I was speaking to Anne Widdecombe about the rise of reform in the polls and about Nigel Farage's big announcement. Stay tuned.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, you know, if he then gone on to lose, you know, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that it's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into
going to be my
into one alert.
It looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, You could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it, and sends it out, even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? There's only about 40 minutes left of the show. You've missed most of it, but at least you are here for the end. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, it's been a good week for Reform UK, and the party polled ahead of the Conservatives in every major poll for the first time, whilst seat-by-seat polling predicts that Nigel Farage's party would take scores of Labour seats in the north of England and Wales if an election were to be held tomorrow. And all of this as Nigel Farage announces that what he calls the biggest UK political rally seen in modern times in March ahead of the local elections. Well, let's take a look at the video Reform UK just posted on X.
Well, we're here in the northeast. You can see what it's like. But on the 28th of March, we're going to launch our campaign for the 1st of May for the local elections and indeed for the mayoral elections. It'll be in Birmingham. Click the link and join the biggest rally held in British politics for decades. Thank you. OK.
Discuss this further. I'm joined by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne, welcome to the programme. Really good to talk to you. Now, I mean, Reform UK, they're surging in the polls at the moment. Nigel Farage is talking about a press conference for a kind of like a rally about rallies, which is great for those who support Reform. Do you think that Reform can keep the momentum? Because we've got 4 years to go, at least.
Oh, yes, I do. I mean, first of all, what we had to do was grab the initiative. And that we've done. I mean, we could have still been plodding on, 1% at a time. We haven't done that. We've grabbed the initiative. We've forged ahead. We've been ahead of the Tories now quite consistently for some time. And gradually we're making huge inroads into Labour. Indeed, one poll, and only one poll, admittedly, had us ahead of Labour. So we've grabbed the initiative. And now what we've got to do is to build on that and to make sure that we become an unstoppable force between now and the next general election. You're quite right. There are 4 years to go, and something will go wrong, but it will go wrong for all the other parties as well, because that's just politics.
Now, the narrative was pushed that the voters who were likely to vote for Reform would come from the Conservative side. But in my view, Reform appeared to be a very working man, working class, in a sense, party that are attracting Labour voters as well. Do you think the Labour Party are really worried about Reform?
Oh, I think they are. They're not going to admit it any more than the Tories do, but they are. They're very worried about Reform. The fact is that Nigel goes down extremely well in what we call the Red Wall, but he goes down well in other sorts of Labour constituencies in the country. Your working man, so to speak, I always hate that phrase, but it's what's used in connection with Labour. Your working man wants exactly the same thing as everybody else. He wants good schools for his kids, a reliable health service for himself and his elderly parents, and he wants a reasonable rate of taxation so that it's worth working, and he wants to feel that he's always going to have a job. And those are the things which people want, and, they don't want all the Labour wokery. That's not what they're after.
Well, those are the things that Labour stood for before, but somehow they stand for something else. Look, as a former Conservative minister, are the Conservatives, in your view, are they toast?
Yes. I think they are. That is why I've always been very, very resistant to any talk of a pact with the Tories, because I feel that all that would do would be to drag reform down. They are a pretty hopeless case now. They were once the greatest party on earth, actually, and hugely successful historically. But they've lost it completely. They're very, very third-rate, and I see no prospect of any good for Britain coming from the Tories.
So why then was Nigel Farage, I mean, he's recently taken 2 Conservative councillors, why is he accepting these failed Tories then? Because surely, again, even ex-Tory ministers and councillors from the Tory party will be, again, a negative thing for Reform UK.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that every single Tory is a hopeless case, and those who, I mean, many have already transferred to Reform, doing very well, helping us tremendously. And I welcome former Tory MPs and former councillors, providing they're of the right calibre. I welcome them into the fold, so to speak. I mean, we've got to take them from somewhere because we weren't around only a few years ago. So we've got to take the Tories, we've got to take Labour. But as I say, it's getting the right calibre, and that will be hugely important when it comes to candidate selection.
Isn't that Reform's biggest problem, though, at the moment, in terms of getting good candidates to stand for them? Because so far, I mean, at the general election, some of their candidates hadn't been vetted properly, or the vetting hadn't worked out properly, and then we ended up finding people who'd done all sorts of awful things. And are they not going to struggle to find the necessary candidates?
Well, I quote your own words back at you. We've got 4 years. We had a mighty rush before the last general election, and the vetting wasn't always as thorough as it should have been, and we're the first to recognise that. But now we've got time, and we can concentrate as we go along. At the moment, we're concentrating on local councils. We're not concentrating on parliamentary candidates. Then we will change to look at parliamentary candidates, and we are getting it right. And yes, there'll be the occasional mistake, as there is in all the other parties as well, but we're getting it right. So 4 years, Nana, you said it. We've got it.
And do you think that Keir Starmer will last the duration? I don't think he's done anything that has appeared to be positive, even around his own supporters. Many people, we often struggle on these programmes to get people who agree with his policies, even from the Labour side. Do you think that Keir Starmer will still be the leader of the party, of that party, in 4 years?
I honestly don't think, if they've got any sense of self-preservation, that they'll let him take them into the next election. But it is actually very difficult to get rid of a Labour leader. It's not quite as easy as it is with the Tories. You just have to get the right number of letters into the 1922 committee. Not like that in the Labour Party. And so it will be very difficult to get rid of him. But never have I seen so swift a collapse in a newly elected Prime Minister's popularity.
Yeah, well, he's probably the best thing that's ever happened to Reform UK. Anne Widdecombe, thank you very much. She's a former minister and Reform UK spokesperson. Well, joining me now is the former deputy leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. I'm going to come to you, Ben, because we are talking about Reform, and you were the former deputy leader there. Genuinely, do you see Reform actually winning the next general election? Do you think that Nigel has the momentum to do that?
Well, he certainly has the momentum with the electorate, no doubt. They have bought Nigel Farage's line in every single way, and people don't trust the Conservative Party. Anne is absolutely right, they don't trust the Conservative Party. But, I mean, I've got a number of points of difference, which we've discussed before, and one of them is that Nigel is, as far as I can see, after just about any Tory he can get on board. He issued, one of the things that prompted me to resign from the party was him issuing a letter to 1,350 Tory councillors who are up for election in May, saying, you're all welcome to join Reform. Well, that's not being discerning. That's basically making the Reform Party Tory Mark II. And
well, maybe some of those councillors would rather be more sort of right-leaning, but what they're dealing with are very left-wing type policies and from their own party. So I mean, an open invitation to people who are more likely to have your perspective is
but I mean, remember, when you issue 1,350 invitations, that is literally without vetting. And the other challenge that creates, and I'm aware of it, is that that upsets the grassroots of Reform, the people who were there before, because suddenly they see these newcomers taking their positions. And so I think that is a challenge. I think the candidacy is a challenge. I think his desire to recruit Tories is not a good move. And then he's got a few policies with which I disagree as well. So, for example, he said he's not worried about the rapid change in demography in this country. He's not in favour of the mass deportation of illegal migrants. These are big issues, with the electorate.
I actually think that those are realistic things to say, because we know the whole legal system won't allow mass deportation anyway, so you're fighting it unless you change it. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
So I think reform has two potential vulnerabilities. One is what Ben said, that they're perceived as the Tory Party Mark II, a Tory Party clone. If that sticks, I think they'll have problems. Secondly, candidates. If they just get a bunch of bad candidates in local and national elections and they seem weak, they're in trouble. So, could they be the largest party? Absolutely. And I think we need to take that seriously. It's unlikely, but it's not implausible.
People need to take the whole thing seriously, actually, and when we're voting, I think people need to really look at the policies and try and understand what the parties are offering. But the worry is that when they do get in, then they just do whatever they like, which is not great. Well, of course, that's Aaron Bastani and Ben Habib. They'll be with me for the rest of the hour. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, my great British debate this hour. I've been asking, is it time to clamp down on activist lawyers? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll get the thoughts of my panel. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. Our headlines. The Prime Minister says the UK will seek a strong trading relationship with the US as North America moves closer to a trade war. He was speaking during the visit of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to his country residence Chequers, ahead of meeting all 27 EU leaders at a summit in Brussels tomorrow. Sir Keir's been urged to start talks on a new customs union with the EU in an effort to reset relations with the bloc, but he has ruled out the UK rejoining the European Union. Meanwhile, Canada and Mexico have announced retaliatory tariffs after the US imposed import taxes on the two countries and China. Donald Trump has ordered 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on goods from China. He says it's to hold his largest trading partners accountable for failing to halt drug trafficking and illegal immigration. China's indicated it will challenge those tariffs through the World Trade Organization, but the Canadian Prime Minister has responded immediately by announcing 25% tariff countermeasures. New laws to target smuggling gangs have been introduced in an effort to stop small boat crossings and migrant deaths in the Channel. The Home Office hopes new counter-terror style powers will enable law enforcement to go further in dismantling gangs and their ability to operate. Well, the government has announced millions of pounds worth of funding to tackle the root causes of illegal migration. 82 people arrived to the UK on small boats today. Barclays customers are facing a third day of payment and transaction issues. The bank says that those technical problems, though, are now resolved. The outage began on Friday. It meant some people couldn't pay their tax bills. Barclays has apologised. It's told customers not to attempt duplicate payments. Unfortunately, HMRC has extended the payment deadline until the beginning of March. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he intends to begin talks on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire on a visit to Washington tomorrow. Elsewhere in the Middle East, though, the city of Jenin in the West Bank has been rocked by a series of simultaneous explosions. The Israeli military has blown up a number of buildings in Jenin. It says they were being used as terrorist infrastructure. Its forces have been conducting a massive operation there for the last 2 weeks. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me at 6 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds, midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest, thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland, some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll see spells of rain to start Monday morning, but temperatures up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Across much of England and Wales, then, it is a largely dry start to the day, perhaps even with some weak sunshine, but a cold start across the southeast. And through much of Monday, not much changes across much of England and Wales. We'll see some hazy spells of sunshine and the odd shower, but turning wet and windy across the northwest of Scotland, with coastal gales here too, and heavy rain that could turn quite persistent at times later on in the day. Otherwise, temperatures ranging 9 to even 11 degrees, so rather mild for the time of year. As we go through Monday evening, then we hold on to this wet and windy weather across northwestern Scotland, moving further into much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, persistent at times. But as we head into the week, higher pressure is going to be building, so plenty of dry and settled weather on the way, turning colder with some overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
39 minutes after 5 o'clock, 21 minutes to go. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome if you've just tuned in. But we're giving you 2 chances now to win in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here are the details that you need.
Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed, but it's time now for the Great British Debate. Of this, I'm asking, is it time to clamp down on activist lawyers? Now, left-wing lawyers and green groups are said to be already plotting legal challenges to Rachel Reeves' plans for a 3rd runway at Heathrow. The Chancellor announced last week that she is reviving the controversial and repeatedly blocked proposals to expand Britain's busiest airport but faces a bitter struggle with lawyers and environmental groups who are preparing to launch a fresh round of legal challenges. We've heard it all before. They do this all the time with migration. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it actually time to clamp down on activist lawyers? Well, joining me now is the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also the co-founder at Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron Bastani, these lawyers, they're so litigious, they make a lot of money out of blocking things. Is it time that we started looking at how they are operating on many fronts, not just Heathrow?
Well, I don't think the lawyers are the problem. They are, I don't use exploiting in a negative sense, they are using the legal system we have in this country. So if you have a problem with, for instance, too much sort of litigious activism and legal activism in this country, then you need to look at things like the Supreme Court. You know, we didn't have a Supreme Court in this country until the late 2000s, I think even 2009, you know. The way it's talked about, you think, is 1,000 years old, but actually it's quite a recent thing. There has to be a balance here between concerns that everyday people have and a means of relaying those concerns and blocking things which are very bad, which, by the way, sometimes is justified. Activists stopped, we must remember, St Pancras Station being bulldozed. John Betjeman, a poet in the 1960s, said it's a gorgeous Victorian building that should not be knocked down. Those NIMBYs were right. Sometimes NIMBYs are right. They're proven right by history. But there's, of course, a trade-off there that sometimes you do need infrastructure of vital national interest, energy pylons, housing, transport, whatever. That also has to happen. Do I think in this country right now in 2024 we've perhaps gone a bit too far towards blocking? Yes. But I do also think you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look back to the 60s. Actually, those activists that saved not just St Pancras Hotel, there was a plan to build a ring road through central London which would have bulldozed Covent Garden. So, like I say, it's really important to remember sometimes NIMBYs are proven right by history.
And I suppose the Labour government are putting things in place to bulldoze through the planning laws as well. So, in a sense, with regard to things like that, you may need to take a legal route. Ben Habib.
Well, just on planning, I don't think they're going to succeed because all the planning laws that they wish to deregulate they're provisos that they've got to comply with all the climate change stuff and net zero, etc., etc. So there's massive regulations still in the planning system which they will not be able to get rid of because they're hitched onto this net zero thing. I think Rachel Reeves on the runway thing is delighted that the lawyers are going to challenge her because she never really had any intention of building a third runway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is her.
What do you think?
This is her just saying, you know, I wanted to build a third runway. I was prepared to stand up to Ed Miliband. I would have delivered growth for this country through that third runway, but I can't do it.
Red meat, is that what it is?
Red meat.
Out red meat.
It's performative politics. It's what we got used to with Boris Johnson. So she can say, I am the Chancellor for Growth, but I've been hijacked. So it's great for her. But, you know, as to the fundamental key point here, we have become far too a legaler country. Our democratic institutions and the accountability of those we've elected to represent our interests have been dumbed down by anti-democratic moves. So we've got far too many quangos, far too many regulatory bodies, far too many black boxes which are entirely unaccountable to the people, regulatory authorities, etc. The Supreme Court, I think, was a terrible invention by the Labour government at the time. The law lords should stay in Parliament, which is the supreme body for creating and then adjudicating the law. That was where it should have been. And we need to move. What we need to do is repeal everything pretty much that any government has done since 1997. Repeal, 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 and when we're knackered of repealing, repeal even more and go back to the status quo that we had in 1996, which was quite a good place for the country to be.
Back to the olden days, Ben Habib.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. What about if we sort of look at migration, because this is something that really annoys me, that when, people come here illegally, they are then able to have, if their application is declined, they're able to have a lawyer, which obviously at our expense, and then if that appeal fails, they can do it again and again and again. I'm sick to my back teeth of it. Aaron Bastani, can we not stop this?
Can we not stop this? There's two answers to that. So the first is what can be changed by domestic politicians in regard to the process. That's an interesting, important conversation. Another one, though, is the amount of displaced people we may see over the course of the next 40, 50, 60 years. You know, the war on terror displaced around 38 million people. My real worry is, between Iran, Pakistan and Egypt, you've got about 450 million people. And this is probably something where we disagree. US foreign policy can be absolutely insane in these countries because fundamentally, when things go wrong, it doesn't affect the US, it affects us. When people are displaced in failed states, they come to Europe. So that's part of my answer. We need a much more sensible foreign policy for our near abroad.
Yeah, well, I think that you may get one set of lawyers helping you out, but I don't think you should get multiple if you come here illegally. But stay with us because this is GB News, and if you are in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, it's rather unsettled across the central Mediterranean. Heavy showers, rain in parts of Spain as well, but there are some drier spells. So across the Canary Islands, we'll see some showers, but across Gibraltar in the south of Spain, some outbreaks of rain here. An area of low pressure will bring some heavy showers and thunderstorms across central parts of the Mediterranean, but there will be some drier spells in between. And then looking ahead, well, plenty of sunshine on offer, and it should be feeling pleasant in that sunshine too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
TikTok chefs, Instagram chefs, that they put children off or young people off of cooking because it's so expertly done that they can't do it. No, my young lad, he's 17, he is amazing in the kitchen. Oh, he is. He's amazing in the kitchen. And he gets it all off TikTok. He comes down, he can put burgers, wraps, stews, curries, sauces, and the smells in the kitchen. I said, where'd you get these? Oh, just TikTok, I'm trying it out. And it's just amazing the things that he can conjure up. So for some people, it might be... it's an inspiration for him. So they're saying that it's intimidation. For my boy, it's an inspiration. They say it's entertainment. For my boy, it's an infomercial. I watch him doing his stuff. At that stage, I could do baked beans on toast and knock up a salad. That was it. But my boy can do all sorts of stuff.
It makes it accessible as well, doesn't it? Because lots of people say, like, you need an education to be in the kitchen, or you need to go find yourself loads of cookbooks. But you don't.
No.
You go on your phone now.
Well, I mean, like, all the spices, sesame oil. I mean, I'm amazed at the stuff that he does. So it's encouraging. All you just need is a kitchen well-stocked and have a go. And understand that failure is actually the route to learning. I mean, he's made mistakes, he's stuck stuff in the bin, but that young man, I am amazed at some of the stuff he does.
I don't mind cooking at all. It's cleaning up that I have the problem with. Dawn, let's talk about sex.
Can I just say there are things called restaurants, by the way? Just put that one. My hell, I don't even know where the kitchen is.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, well, it's time for Supplement Sunday, the part of the show where my panel and I talk through some of the stories throughout the week. Well, joining me now, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron Bastani, we'll start with you.
My story?
Yes, what's your story?
It's a very interesting story from the Mail on Sunday about a Lib Dem council whose deputy town centre manager, and this is in Windsor, Eton and Ascot, lives in Kyrgyzstan. For people who aren't aware of that, For people who aren't aware of that, again, just to repeat, the Deputy Town Centre Manager. He lives 3,500 miles away. It's work from home on steroids. Now, I'm not opposed to work from home. I think you can have a good mix. Maybe you go into the office 3 times a week. People might disagree. That's just my view. But permanently working 3,500 miles away from somewhere when you're responsible for a town centre seems rather strange.
Utter madness. Ben Habib, what have you got?
Mine is of a Hollywood actor who's about to find himself, or he's already found himself, on the wrong side of Donald Trump. Chap called Anthony Mackie, who played the mechanically winged figure Falcon in Captain America. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And what he said was that, in his view, to me, I'm quoting, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term America should be one of those representations.
Oh, for God's sake.
He then went on to say, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honour, dignity and integrity. The implication, of course, being that Americans don't have it. So I think this man's about to get into trouble with President Trump.
He's about to get trumped. Well, listen, this is my story, and it might be an old one, but I just found it and thought, wow, is this true? This is about a discovery straight out of something from science fiction. Scientists revived a microscopic worm species that was frozen for 46,000 years in a Siberian permafrost. And once it was thawed, the worm sprang back into life, fed on bacteria in the lab dish, reproduced asexually, and then passed away, leaving behind a new generation of descendants for biologists to study.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, can you imagine it? So it's basically a cryogenically frozen thing that came back to life. So there might actually be something in cryogenics. I mean, I'm not going to give it a go because I think you have to be frozen alive.
But it's commitment.
I hate the cold.
It's commitment to propel its DNA.
Yeah,
you know, extraordinary.
Isn't it?
Reproduce before dying.
I know, I thought it might be like a fake news, but ChatGPT says it is true. So I'm going to go with that. There you go. Well, listen, throughout the show, I've been asking, are Labour making the UK more attractive to illegal migrants? Well, let's check. According to our GB News poll, Aaron Bastani, what do you think? Numbers.
Make it more attractive? I don't know. I think probably maybe 70%.
And Aaron Bastani...
Well, I've got to go higher, 90%.
I'm even going to go higher than that. 99%. It is 99%.
It is 99%.
That's right. They say yes, they are. He's making it more attractive for illegal migrants. Only 1% of you say no. That is the GB News poll. It was on our website. But, hey, I think that most people would say the same thing. I've got to say thank you so much to my panel, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. And there's a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I look forward to seeing you 9:30 on Friday for Britain's Newsroom, but I'll leave you with the weather. Have a wonderful week.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead, it's going to be cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain in the northwest, drier in the southeast before higher pressure builds midweek. Looking at the pressure pattern out there at the moment, then higher pressure out towards the east with a weak frontal system towards the west, bringing cloud and rain here. So we've had plenty of sunshine across the southeast through this afternoon. We'll hold on to the clearest skies here through the evening. Cloud across much of northern England, Wales and the southwest. Thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle, but turning wet and windy across northwestern Scotland later through the night. Many places holding up tonight and frost-free, but across the far southeast, that's where we'll see a touch of frost to start Monday morning. Now, through Monday morning, it's a cloudy picture across much of Scotland. Some heavy spells of rain and strong winds across the far west. A similar picture across Northern Ireland. We'll